Hello and welcome back, guys. So let's finish up here. Let's see what happens when we post. Okay. Now the thing is, if we go back to slider images view, we need to be able to know which you know what? We need to be able to know which part we are saving. Now, it's up to you really what you want to do. For me, what I did here is I removed these buttons to be on the outside so that regardless which slider I'm on, I'm pressing the same buttons. But maybe that wasn't such a good idea. That complicates things a little bit because we need to identify each form as a separate entity. We can do that the way I've done it like this, but I think for the sake of teaching a tutorial, it may get confusing. So I don't want to add unnecessary complexity. So what I would do instead is, my bad, I'll remove the form and the buttons here. I would just move them back into this div here. This is the div that contains the one active form. So that div ends here. So let me grab the form and put it here. Where is that? There. Okay. So once we move this to a form of its own, we can then add a trigger to identify which form we're actually on when we are submitting. So here we have this save profile, but we can change this to something else. Let's say save image. Let's just change it to save image. Okay, and then we have an event here, but then we can add a second parameter here to tell us which one we are saving. So in this one, this is the second slider. So we're just going to add a number 2 there like that. But then we're going to use that as the ID to save from. So save image. Now that we have all of that, let's go down to the save image. There we go. All right. So we have save image here, and so we have the event, then we can put ID like that. Because we've sent an ID from the other side, we can grab it here. And then we grab the form that it currently is on. We grab all the inputs from there, and then we create an object. Did we add an image? If image was added, that would be true. Okay. And then we go through a loop where the thing is an image. We add the image. The rest of them are added just as normal inputs, which is fine. And then we can validate the image as well. So validation, blah, blah, blah. And then we send the object. So far, so good. Everything seems fine here up to there. And then, excuse me, on the handle result here, we're going to, let's see here, this, if there are any errors, images saved successfully. Okay, so all that looks good. Otherwise, we display any errors that come with that. Okay, great. So this side seems fine. Now let's go to the admin view, and we're on the slider images function. So on this point, we're going to receive, in the post variable, we're going to receive an ID as well. Oh, we didn't send it here. That's one thing I did not do. So what we can do is add it to the object here, because we're adding things to the object like this. So here, let's just say add form ID as well. So I'm just going to say obj dot ID is equal to ID. So this ID is the variable there, and ID is the key we've given it. So you can either do this, or you can put it like this and put a string. It will still work the same way. Okay, so there we go. So now we have an ID that we can receive here. All right, so now let's imagine we receive the information. So we will ignore the ID for now because we won't get any IDs from there. So this one is irrelevant, but let's leave it there for now. We create a new slider model, and then we read from the database where there is a slider. Now the thing is, here we want to use we want to try and read only when we are posting, right? So let me grab this. Let me just pull this down into the post section. Oh, wait a minute. Let's leave that be. Okay, we're going to leave that be for now because that's for the images when they are loading we don't need to only do that when we are posting. So since we have these rows here, we can check to see if our particular row that has our ID is present in these rows. Then we can use that to know whether we need to update or insert a new row. So if we go to our database here, let me go to my database and let's look at slider images. That's the table. Okay, so this one has no records whatsoever. So if we tried to update a record here, it wouldn't be possible. So we need to know whether if a particular record exists, then we update it. If not, we create a new one. So that's what we will need to know here. And then the ID in this case should be equal to, let me grab this. I'm going to update it here because once we post, we expect to have an ID in there. So let's do this. Post should come with an ID. Now, if the ID isn't present, let's just put maybe 0 just to make sure we don't affect anything. So ID there should be the ID that we send, which is the one we created right there. Okay. And so everything else remains the same. We create a folder if it's not there, and then we upload the image itself. Now, if you notice, the uploading of the image is after the validation. So to make sure that if there's any validation required, we pass through that before we attempt to upload an image. And what else here? If there are any errors, we will see them here. That's right. And if not, so right here we need, before we can do any of this, we need to make sure that there are no images, there are no errors here. So I'm just going to say if empty. I think I should recheck the profile thingy here to make sure that I added this as well. So here what I want to check for is if this is empty, so that we only save when this is empty, like this. So if there are no errors, then we can save, because this can create errors here. So then we can save, and then here we can just save a message saying image saved successfully. That should be fine. No need to redirect since this is Ajax. What else? Actually, we don't need these messages here because we are still on the same page, but we can leave them be. Profile, Okay, everything else looks about right, except we need to check here if there is a record. So I'm just going to say, I'll just call it check, or I'll say result, just res is equal to slider, and I'm going to use first. Let's see what we used here at the top. That was the where clause. Okay, that's fine. So I want to see if we can find an ID with the current ID. Okay, so if res comes back with a result like this, then we know a record exists, so we're going to update the record. So I'll move this up there like that. Okay, and then I'll put an else statement, and then on this one we insert, and so the ID should not be here. Now, in order to insert, I want us to insert a very particular ID. So because we know the ID that we have here, okay, so what I'll do is I'm just going to add the ID to the post variable. So I'll do this and say post. Oh, actually the ID is already there because we are getting it from there right about here. Okay, so I'm just going to add that to it. There's actually no need to add it. So what we need to make sure is in the models, if I go to the slider model, I need to include ID in this case because I want ID to be updatable as well. So include that there. Let's come back here. And then when I'm updating, I don't want the ID to be updated as well, but it's a non-issue. But in case that's what you want, because we've accepted as ID to be updatable, it's better we unset it from there. That way it's not part of the post thingy here. Okay, great. So if not empty, and let's just make sure that ID is a thing, right? And ID like that to make sure it exists before we try to save. Okay, cool. Update, insert. Okay, this should cover things for now. And then let's go back to slider. Let's see what, okay, so a title is required, a description. Okay, so an image is required as well. So let's just make sure that we add this image thing, because if we come back here and we try to evaluate, wait, is this edit evaluate? It's just validate. There's edit validate here. This is always kind of like edit, so I'll just remove that because slider has the validate function. So let's make sure we are up to task. Okay, now before we validate here, because it won't have an image, the image is always in the files thingy. So what we'll do is we'll copy this like that. Okay. Okay, what I'm trying to do is evaluate the image before we get to this point. That way, when we are doing this evaluation, there's going to be image here. So what I'll do instead is let me try and just move this whole part outside this validation process like this. Okay, let's do that. Let me shift tab. Okay, so at this point it's going to do all the checks, except I don't want it to move the file just yet unless everything else is good. So what I'll do is I'll grab the move uploaded file into here like so. Okay, what am I doing? Like that. Boom. Okay, there we go. Okay, so in this place, we're going to do everything. You see, set the file name. We can't resize the image, of course, because we haven't moved it yet, but let me move this one as well to follow. And then we'll have post image, which will be set here, is equal to destination. So that is set, which is nice. If file exists, unlink. So let's not yet unlink the old file. So let's move this as well to down here. Okay, everything else remains the same. All we are doing is adding the image to post so that when we send post here into here, it's going to be evaluated and we'll know that an image exists. Okay, cool. But then, because destination is only given when everything is good, so we just need to check if destination exists, then we know there is an image that was added. So I'm going to copy this and then just say if not empty, like that, destination. Usually destination should always be there because we're checking for it here anyway. So it's just a check to make sure that we are not causing any errors, just in case, you never know. So let's move this here, let's move that back. Right, so if not empty destination, then upload the file. So the file is automatically uploaded to a temporal folder, and then all we are doing is moving it from the temp folder to the folder that we want, which is destination, and then we resize that image, and then we, if file exists, the old image, we delete that. Now, how do we know that the old image would exist? Wait a minute here. So we grabbed everything from the rows, but row is not a thing here, right? So this shouldn't be a thing. So let me remove that, because whether we have rows or not, we should be able to pass through here anyway. But we still need to know if an old image exists, and if it does, we remove it. So what we will do is, I want us to grab a particular row from here. Actually, what we're going to do is, let's try and use this ID to grab a specific row. So we've done this here, right? So what I'll do is, I'll just do this. I'll change this to row, like that. Slider first, ID. So if it exists, we'll have it in here. Cool. So I'll come up here right after the ID and do that. So we read it from there. That's good. And that way we have row available. Where is this? Here. All right, good. And then we'll check if there are any errors. If there are none, we continue. So again, it's better to check. Actually, we don't need this check anymore because we're inside the validate. The thing that would have caused more errors here, we've moved it away, which is this one. So we don't need this check anymore. I'm just going to remove that and remove the, let's reduce the code. Like that. Okay, cool. So we move the file, delete the old one, and then we check if the row is available, and then we do the following. So what else here have we? If slider validate, what else? You know, I could save myself some trouble by moving this out of here again, like this. Okay. Okay, so that we do this here. This is redundant now. Let's remove it. And then we can use and row, which I had removed earlier. Okay, I think I like this now. So you have to fiddle around a bit so that everything makes logical sense by the end. Okay. I think everything is good at this point. Very cool. All right. Let's give it a test run, shall we? And see what errors we get. Cool. So back here. Let's try and refresh the page. Oh, there we go. So syntax error, unexpected token on line 330 in admin.php. So admin.php 330, where is that? Right here. Okay, sorry, my bad. Should have put a bracket here and a closing corresponding bracket there. Let's refresh. Okay, there we go. So let's try and hit save. And apparently there's no data validation whatsoever. So let me inspect the element and see what we received in the console. Prog is no. Okay, so it's telling me there's no progress bar whatsoever. So fine. What do? I go back to my profile section. Where is profile? Profile view. And then look for prog. Where is that? So here's the progress bar. Let me copy that. It's right at the bottom. So let me go above the JavaScript, and this is where we are clicking to save. Let me put that prog right there. So now we have a progress bar. Okay, pretty cool. Let's see what it will complain about now. Let me try save. Okay, so that went well, but then we got some bad results. So here, all we need to do is go to the handle results section, and right where there's a result here, let's do a console.log so that we check what's going on. So console.log. Let's see what result we got. Okay, so back again. Let's refresh and let's click without uploading anything. Click, and there we go. So we got back all the HTML here from the dashboard. So we are not supposed to get all of that. Now the reason we're getting this is because once we post here and then it reaches the end here, it continues, but there's die here. So I'm wondering why this is happening. Okay, so it's possible that row was not a thing, but then still so which means it didn't pass through here, because otherwise it would have died here, but instead it went ahead and went to this section, which is not good, and so it missed the die thingy. So I think what we need is two if statements, so that even if we didn't get the result we wanted, as long as we posted something, it shouldn't go all the way down. So I'll move this a little lower. So I'll do this, and I'll just say if not row, we can simply die there as well. That way we won't continue down this path. So let me clear everything here and click save again. And as you can see, it brought an empty string, which means I was right. It's the row that we are not getting. We can try that by copying this and doing show row over here. Or if you want to see the data type as well, you do var dump like that. And then let's give it a check. Okay, and let's save. And then we get a boolean of false. So we're not getting the information we want. But the video has gone on long enough, so let's continue in the next video and troubleshoot this.